Okay, thank you for joining us today. We are going to talk about why we called the Gajumaru. And to that end, I should just pass straight to Craig. Craig is sitting in Okinawa, Japan, and actually the inspiration comes from there. So over to you, Craig.
Uh, yeah, thanks. So looking at making a blockchain that actually works, we had a great base to start from with a lot of the issues, but there were lots of outstanding ones. One of them is scalability, and we knew that at the root of it, you have to do what the traditional banking system done to some degree, which is partition the problem and try to get down as local as possible whenever needed. So have that as an option. And that winds up looking at as a tree structure. And as when I was first trying to write this out, I didn't know what to call it. And I guess fortuitously, outside of my office window, there is a type of tree that's got they called a Gajumaru, and it's got a single. It grows first from a single bole, but pretty quickly it starts dropping these support roots, and they wind up becoming trunks of their own, which is similar to the structure that we actually want. We would like to have, branch connections between different tree trunks that all are themselves independent trees. The thing to tie them together that you can't do without if you want to make a digital currency is you have to have an anonymous proof of work mint to define the currency itself, and a mint that no party can control, which means that we can trust it. So a trustless mint's required. That requires proof of work for a whole bunch of reasons we can't go into right now, but it's an important thing. But then that consensus model doesn't work for everything. So we want to be able to have this freedom to create other chains that have their own rules, but all who can speak the same language and use this single currency across all the chains. So anyway, seeing this tree, I was like, whoa, hey, that's a good working name. It's a crazy name. It'll be easy to search for later, Gajumaru. And we use that name and then it stuck. And so that's what we're going with. So it's the Gajumaru. As far as how the chains talk to each other, how the interplay works, Dimitar knows the details. He's been working on helping implement a lot of that. So you mentioned some of this.
Okay, so those different trees that Greg was talking about, those we call associate chains, and they all are spawned from the mint, and they share the same economy, but they can vary in their approach of what is allowed there and what is not. They can have different consensus, so they can be using not proof of work, but proof of stake, proof of authority, and whatever is suitable for the particular business case that they're solving. What this allows is for them to have their own independent database, their own independent CPU space. So basically, their own transaction throughput. This means that if there is a really big transaction flow from business A that is running on one associate chain, this is not going to impact different associate chain and their throughput. Something that we had seen times and times again when there is a really viral product on, let's say, Ethereum. The whole network is congested, and this hurts the business case for everyone else that is trying to do anything. And this drives the fees up because everyone is trying to be bribing miners or block producers to be including their transactions instead of the other transactions that are currently in the pool. With the associate chains, this is not a problem because you, as a business, can own your own transaction throughput, and it doesn't interfere with anyone else's. And depending on what your expectations of the transactions you expect on your chain would be, you can define your own block size, costs, and you can even forbid or allow new functionalities depending what you actually need. And how this ties to the whole ecosystem, I'll pass the ball to Ulf so he can explain.
Yes, so of course you've all seen the previous video where we talked about trust markets, and that's also something that ties into this where you can anchor your associate chain into a specific regulatory space. And But the thing that really sets this apart from just a loose collection of chains is, like Dimitar said, that we provide a whole ecosystem. So the things that we will demand in the Gajumaru is that when you have an account, that account is valid on every chain. And each associate chain will treat the main chain, the mint, kind of like a local bank would treat the central bank. That's where you get the mint actually produces the coin for the entire ecosystem. The coin is valid on all associate chains. So when you start an associate chain, you will essentially check out Gajumaru, which is then, or Gajus, which are then transferred from the mint to your associate chain. And then you can work it, actually use actual money on your associate chain. And the Gajus can be transferred between associate chains. And you as a user can transfer Gajus from your account on one associate chain to your account on another associate chain. And it's important for this also for the mint to be a fully fledged, high capacity, trustless blockchain. So that you can essentially, you could run your applications on the Gajumaru in the unregulated space. And then for performance reasons, if you are successful, you may actually want to spawn an associate chain and move your traffic out there. Or if you decide that you actually need to become real and adapt to the jurisdiction your business operates in, you can also move to an associate chain and adapt consensus, KYC, whatever, to your local legal needs and still be part of this ecosystem. And essentially then you would probably treat the Gajus as more or less foreign currency. That's not under your regulatory control, but you can still use it. So from there, I guess I would like to.
Well, I'll talk to that because when people talk about a lot of these things in blockchain, the assumption is that there is a one ring to rule them all type approach. And as we've discussed before, people miss the fact that J.R. Tolkien was really talking about how that is an absolute power that absolutely corrupts. But there's a more fundamental point that you're hitting on here, which is that there is no one solution for every need or requirement. And when you start looking at something like, for example, how might we implement blockchain as a payment rails for banks to operate within a country? So you gave the example of a central bank and large banks, but actually for certain types of transactions, you're going to want certain levels of security and participation. For others, you might want something else. And there was a central bank we were talking to in the past, and that was exactly one of the points they made, is that if someone's buying a coffee, we're quite happy for the cost of that coffee transaction to be reflected in a very high-speed chain that operates a certain way. But we'd really like something very secure for interbank settlements, end-of-day settlements, and so on. And this is exactly what we need to appreciate, that in the real world, there are different needs and requirements around how a blockchain itself would be implemented and used. And the fact that the Gajumaru itself lends itself to this whole idea, that it says, okay, well, you need a core that works, but then you can begin to compose all of these associate chains around it that are their own blockchain effectively, and can choose their consensus method, can choose how they want to operate, but do that with the security of the Gaju underpinning it and the Gajumaru mint itself. So at that point, I would just hand over to Peter for a quick close.
Yeah, guys, and one of the things, I've been sort of following blockchain for a while, And one of the key things I found, I've looked at numerous projects, there's just so many layers of complexity. There's a technical complexity, there's an economical complexity. And when you look at the sphere and the ecosystem just now, it doesn't make sense. And it took me a while, it's still taking me a while even now to actually move into it. But even coming back to the Gajumaru, what we're trying to achieve is simplify even the name and how we describe things, just so everyone outside can actually just start understanding what we're doing, how we're actually going to deliver the promise of blockchain. Because currently, if you go and try and find out, you've got a lot of learning, a lot of left and rights. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense, and it's just a nightmare, you know. So what we want to achieve to do is actually really communicate that to the world and start laying down little chunks of information in different ways so they can actually understand the purpose of what we're trying to do, how it can benefit everyone, and how we can use technology to move the economical system into a better fabric for everyone, you know, and move it forward. So keep coming back and keep looking, and we'll keep coming down with new little chunks of videos to help everyone out to understand what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.